Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wacky Kansas City Museum. We're going to start out here by looking at Mr. Robert A. Long, and this is the gentleman that allegedly built this home in 1910, and obviously that was previous to it becoming his story museum. But let's get this started. Robert Alexander Long, born 1850, expired 1934 at the age of 83, was an American lumber baron, developer, investor, newspaper owner, and philanthropist. He lived most of his life in Kansas City, Missouri, and founded Longview, Washington, and Longview, Louisiana. By 1906, Long owned 250,000 acres of pine in Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana, and converted it into 61 lumber yards. As the timberland was deforested in Louisiana, he moved west to the state of Washington and bought 270,000 acres of Douglas fir. Long eventually owned many acres of lands and buildings spanning the United States from Washington, D.C. to the state of Washington. So, Mr. Long here, just buying up land everywhere, deforesting, and naming places after himself. Long was born December 17, 1850 in Shelbyville, Kentucky, one of 9 children born to Samuel M. Long and Margaret Kincaid White. His mother was a cousin of Joseph Clay Stiles Blackburn and Luke P. Blackburn. 3 of Long's older brothers, Thomas E. S. and Belverd, served in the American Civil Wars, but Robert was too young. Lucky him. Who's this Joseph and Luke Blackburn here? An American politician and lawyer. And another politician. Surprise. Long moved to Columbus, Kansas in 1873, where his uncle, C.J. White, was a banker. Oh, a banker, eh? Got politicians and bankers. In 1874, Long met 19-year-old Martha Ellen Wilson. She was a Quaker and became a school teacher. After a year of courtship, the two were married December 16, 1876. A son lived only a few weeks, but the couple had 2 daughters. In 1879, Sally America Long Ellis was born, and in 1881, their youngest daughter, Lola Long Combs, expired in 1971, was born. Long started a hay bale company along with his cousin Robert White and friend Victor B. Bell. And I'm assuming that this Robert White is a son of the banker up here, Mr. C.J. White. The hay venture failed, but the 3 were able to sell the lumber from the hay sheds. That's right. Seeing that lumber was in demand, they ordered more lumber. Business was good, and the partners opened more yards. So they went from, disassembling their hay barns and selling the lumber from that, and that kind of just snowballed into starting a few lumber yards of their own. In 1877, the youngest partner, Robert White, expired, and the remaining partners bought out his share. Robert and Victor formed the Long Bell Lumber Company in Columbus, Kansas. While in Columbus, he bought 1,520 acres and developed a profitable coal mine with 2 shafts at Stone City. The location is found only in historical maps as the town no longer exists, but was just east of Northwest 40th Street, south of the junction of Northwest Mirror Road, which is northwest of Columbus. What a cluster F of a sentence right there. Good luck finding that, folks. And as we mentioned before, they started their lumber company in 1887, the Long Bell Lumber Company. The headquarters was moved to Kansas City, where it remained until it was sold. In 1889, Samuel H. Wilson, Robert's brother-in-law that began with the company in 1887, took over the retail department, a position he held until his expiration on October 20th, 1903. So, okay, we started out with 3 partners up here. One of these guys expired, this Robert White. And then now we're down here with the Long Bell Company. And apparently this Samuel H. Wilson that was running the retail department expired as well, all of a sudden. And in 1891, the capital stock was increased to $500,000. The Long Bell Lumber Company was vertically integrated from the forest to the lumber yard and became the world's largest lumber company in the early 20th century. The Long Bell Lumber Company filed for bankruptcy in 1934, then filed a reorganization plan in the Kansas City Federal Court in 1935 after Long's death. So we went from the world's largest lumber company in the early 20th century to filing for bankruptcy. When the railroad entered Louisiana, Robert Long was among the earliest to set up shop. He purchased land in many parts of the state to begin lumber harvesting to supply the needs of his giant lumber company. In 1900, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but in 1900, the Long Bell Lumber Company organized the King Ryder Lumber Company. By 1904, the mill was producing 300,000 board feet of lumber daily. 1904, they were producing 300,000 board feet of lumber daily. And it goes on. They keep buying up other mills and businesses everywhere, and also towns. One of the purchases included 7 locomotives, 120 log cars, and 58,000 miles of track. Also, the company built a 3-story, 60-room Southern hotel, 163 cottages for workers. They had an elementary and high school, machine shop, roundhouse, car repair shop, and a blacksmith. So what's really going on here? This is 1906, and we built all of these things to run a lumber business, I guess. And he goes on to acquire more companies. A little bit of union talk here, I'm not going to get into. Then we move on to Washington State. He founded the city of Longview, Washington. And I didn't see it up here, but he also, that must be what all of these cottages and hotels and auto repair shops and roundhouses, that must be Longview, Louisiana, they're referring to. So is he really buying up and building these things, or what? A planned city built in 1923, Near two of Long Bell's lumber mills, he personally donated funds for the city's public library, First High School, train station, YMCA, and Hotel Monticello, which sounded interesting, but of course a page does not exist for it. The mills were advertised as the largest in the world. And keep in mind, all of this is before they filed for bankruptcy. This information here isn't exactly in order. A newspaper was planned along with the city, and on January 27, 1923, the first issue of Longview News came off the press. So, involved in some propaganda here as well, apparently, which we did read earlier. Newspaper owner. Another one of those gentlemen that had his dirty little hands in everything, apparently. Long was a principal stockholder until his expiration in 1934, and in a family trust until 1947. In 1981, the paper won a Pulitzer Prize for coverage of the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. And before moving on here, let's take a little peek at this Longview, Washington. Looking like any old world little town, USA. Complete with Chinese restaurant. There's the Monticello. Wow. So here we are. This is what Long was building in the early 1900s to facilitate his lumber business. And this is the R.A. Long High School, constructed in 1927. Did they give us a date on this? No. Not a very good image there. Here's a few quick images of the high school, possibly. Here we go. Look at this beauty. Look at this janky cornerstone. Long's home in Kansas City, named Corinthian Hall, was completed in 1911. The 72-room French Renaissance mansion, located on Gladstone Boulevard, was Kansas City's first million-dollar home, is now the Kansas City Museum. On November 14, 1980, the building was entered into the National Register of Historic Places. In 1907, the R.A. Long Building, a bourgeois skyscraper in downtown Kansas City, was built at 928 Grand Avenue, and it is also listed in the NRHP. And I'm pretty sure we drove by this. It was probably on the GoPro footage of one of my the Colonnade exploration. I did a little drive through downtown. I was going to look at a few things, but there was a lot going on down there, including bad vibes, so I didn't stick around. But let's see, this is also something Mr. Long is involved with here. I guess that's all I can zoom in. We're going to get a boots on the ground look at this thing eventually, and several other structures downtown. And we get into the Longview Farm. Longview Farm was built in 1913 to 1914 in eastern Jackson County on the outskirts of Kansas City. The 2,000-acre farm had 42 buildings, 250 acres of clipped lawns, extensive flower beds, and 4 greenhouses. Are you joking me? This is a 1-year build we're talking about here. From 1913 to 1914, 42 structures, extensive flower beds, and 4 greenhouses. Portions of the farm are now sites of Longview College and Longview Lake. And I was going to get into this if it wasn't mentioned in here, but there is a Longview College, which is a new structure, but the lake here, something we're going to be checking out eventually as well. But, you know, obviously we went through these naming of towns, Longview, Louisiana, and Longview, Washington, and I'm aware of Longview Lake and Longview Farm, and there's a Longview Road that runs through Grandview, Missouri. That's pretty much going to wrap up the Wacky on Mr. Long here. We're going to jump over to the Museum of Kansas City. Alright, I tried to take a little break to listen to watch my favorite Saturday night podcast, but after about 3 times of ads popping up and everything locking up, I've decided to shut that down, and we are back here on the Wacky. And we're going to look into the Kansas City Museum. The Museum of Kansas City is located in, guess where, everybody? Kansas City, Missouri. In 1910, the site was built by lumber baron and civic leader Robert A. Long as his private family estate, with the 4-story historic, a bizarre style mansion named Corinthian Hall. In 1940, the site was donated by Long's heirs, that's right, Long heirs, to become a public museum. 75 years later, it began extensive renovation. The 3-acre estate consists of Corinthian Hall, named for its Corinthian columns, and its outbuildings. It was built as a private residence for Robert A. Long and his family, completed in 1910 for an estimated $1 million, equivalent of $33.7 million in 2024. So here they tell us it was completed in 1910, and on the Robert A. Long Wacky, they said that it was completed in 1911. So, regardless, still sounding like another 1-year build. And if you watched my boots on the ground video, tell me, is it possible to build such a structure in 1 year's time? Long began buying land on Gladstone Boulevard to build the future home of himself, his wife Ella, and one of their daughters, the Lola Long Ellis. The location of Corinthian Hall was chosen because it overlooked North Terrace Park, later named Kessler Park, giving ample room for Lola to exercise her horses. Long wanted the entire block for his estate. However, 2 houses already sat on the desired land. He bought both of the homes with the condition that they would be moved. One of the houses was a high-turreted, 3-story red brick mansion that was the residence of Judge William Hockaday Wallace and his family. This house was moved to 3200 Norridge. And so I kind of did this wacky already once, and I pretty much deemed the whole thing to be boo-boo. And imagine that, even worse than this one here. But while I was doing that, I was questioning how the hell are we moving a high-turreted 3-story red brick mansion in the early 1900s? And this 3200 Norridge here, this Norridge Street, happens to be the street that we were walking on. There was a castle on this street, as well as 2 other old world beauties that we looked at. The other home was residence of Herman F. Schmelzer, again with these freakish names here. But after Long bought it and had it moved, he gave the house to Dr. George Hamilton Combs. The doctor himself pops up once again. So what an honorable man. After he bought the residence, he was, the original plan was to move it for the people to continue to live in, but he was going to take care of everything, right? And then apparently he decided instead to give it to this Dr. George Hamilton Combs here, because Combs was not only the pastor of the Independence Boulevard Christian Church, where the Longs attended, but also the father of Lola's future husband, Robert Pryor Combs. Keeping it all in the family here. Sounds like a setup from the start. After the houses were moved, Long had the entire block to build his final home, Corinthian Hall, alongside several other buildings and structures. The other buildings were the Gatehouse or Lodge, which that's what I couldn't remember what they were referring to as far as the outbuildings are concerned, and belonging to horse trainer David Smith and his family. The carriage house where horses and tack were kept, the conservatory, a gardener's shed, and a greenhouse. A pergola covered in wisteria hung over a walkway which connected the carriage house, conservatory, and greenhouse. As of September 2025, all buildings and structures are still present, except for the greenhouse, which was destroyed in the 1960s. In a fire, no doubt. In 1917, Lola married Robert Pryor Combs, and the couple moved to Longview Farm, while the Long's other daughter, Sally America Long Ellis, did not live at the Corinthian Hall. She would visit often with her children. She gave birth to 4 out of her 5 children at the home. So, we're not getting a whole lot of information about this Sally America Long Ellis. She must be an estranged daughter or something of the sort. And this was the family residence until Long's expiration in 1934. Daughters Sally and Lola removed decorative items and architectural features from the Corinthian Hall for installation in their own homes, including a fireplace from the library taken to Lola's home at Longview Farm. The remainder of the items were auctioned off over a 2-day period in the fall of 1934. Then the mansion sat empty and was for sale. The daughters donated the estate to the Kansas City Museum Association in 1939. Here we are auctioning everything off and removing items from the home to place in their extravagant Longview Farm here, with a ridiculous amount of structures, among other things. Look at this beauty. And this was a 1-year build. This structure here, along with numerous others, and greenhouses. Beautiful fountain out here. We're gonna have to go out here also at some point. I've been out here before. They probably still do, but they would host vintage car shows. Oh, I guess my point being, well, obviously these, it never seems that there's any end to any of the characters in the narrative as far as money is concerned. So donating such an estate is no problem for them. The museum's first director was John Ripley Forbes, a naturalist and conservationist from Massachusetts. After learning about the plans to turn Corinthian Hall into a museum, he borrowed $100 and drove down to Kansas City with no prior notice to the city leaders. He told them, "I have come to work. I'll raise the money, set up a first-class museum, open a children's program, and go without pay until you can afford me." That's what he told them, all right. During Forbes' time, he amassed 160,000 items for the museum's collection. With the help of volunteers and labor from the WPA, Works Progress Administration, which has been repairing old world structures since 1935, it looks like. And we saw I wouldn't really call it a stamp, but it looked like a carving into the side of that wall on the school. That was 1936 was the date on that. But anyways, the mansion was transformed into exhibits, and the conservatory became a space where school groups could interact with live animals. On May 5th, 1940, the museum opened to the public. It goes on to talk about some of the funding. But how about this John Ripley Forbes up here? I mean, just on a whim, picked up everything, borrowed $100, drove his butt down to Kansas City, and here we go. Bing, bang, boom. We got a freaking first-class museum with 160,000 items. Anyways, they got some wars talk. And they made a few changes to their exhibits. And as you know now, it's mainly focused on Kansas City itself. Pretty much just brings us up to present date here. So I think I'm just going to wrap this one up. It only took me several days to get back to this, but we got a few little boots on the ground explorations in, so you can't be too mad at me. I know a lot of you guys aren't really interested in his story. You just want to see the structures, and that's cool. But we got to look at this stuff because within the lies, there's a little bit of truth. Thanks again.